I call the November 22nd, 2024 special meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education to order. There being no opposition to any item on the agenda, it is adopted by unanimous consent. The first report, the only report we have today is the comprehensive review plan for student assignment, and I turn to Dr. Hill to lead this discussion.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We are excited today to be with you to go through our 2024-25 Comprehensive Data Review Phase 2. This is day 2 of our presentation, and we have a lot of great things planned for you. Please be prepared to be active because we will be doing a lot of work together as we dig into the data. As we begin our process today, I just want to remind members of the board and the general public that the purpose of this is to review the data that's presented as it's aligned to the board's goals. And on December 10th, we'll be looking to the board to set some priorities for us in terms of what we need to do with this data and change our current practice to move forward. We believe the things we'll do today will help you begin to move towards that end. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Melissa Baldwin.
Thank you, Dr. Hill, and good afternoon. You all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm excited today to continue our work within phase 2 of the comprehensive data review, including updates from the 2023 bond project. Before we formally begin, I would like to call your attention to the note card on the table before you. So I'm going to make a shift in our activity because you all are eating, so you don't have to move. We're going to modify so you now can ignore the table tent. And so I would just ask if the first 3 board members here would plan to work as a group, the 3 in the middle here would plan to work as a group, and then the 3 here. We actually had you divide it randomly, but that will require you to move, and that may be quite a bit in this first part of our session. So you're now in your small groups. You will at least be seated in these small groups for the next 90 minutes, as the activity will take 90 minutes. Thank you for your participation and engagement. We're excited to get into the work today. So with us today, we have Ms. Terry Cervick, our Associate Superintendent of Planning, Placement, and Programming, that will assist with the group activity, as well as Brett Buchanan, our Executive Director of Career Technical Education, and Catrice Braswell, our Executive Director of Program Planning. So as we reviewed in our meeting with Mr. Jeter and Mr. McCulley, on November the 1st, the goals of board policy S-ASGP serve as the foundation for this 24-25 comprehensive data review. So again, I will remind you of the 5 goals that we're here to focus on today. A, provide choice and promote equitable access to varied and viable programmatic options for all children. B, maximize efficiency in the use of school facilities, transportation, and other capital and operational resources to reduce overcrowding. C, reduce the number of schools with high concentrations of poor and high needs children. D, provide school assignment options to students assigned to schools that are not meeting performance standards established by the state. And E, preserve and expand schools and programs in which students are successfully achieving the mission and vision of the board. To be clear, every decision we make today will be in alignment with these 5 goals in Board of Education Policy S-ASGP as presented previously. Board of Education Policy S-ASGP governs all student assignment decisions that will be made as a part of this work, both enacting the 2023 bond projects and enacting any additional priorities provided today or shared. So as mentioned, we're here to focus on November the 22nd, and we'll focus on today the 2024-25 Comprehensive Data Review Summary, report the results of the demographic and capacity utilization assessment as provided by proper GIS. A deeper look at the summary of findings for the data points will be provided today, a better understanding of the timeline needed to support bond project implementation, and lastly, Mr. Matthew Price will report on the results of the demographics and capacity utilization assessment conducted for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Finally, on December the 10th, we will look to you, our Board of Education, to take the data and information presented through the current phase 2 of the Comprehensive Data Review to provide the superintendent with your priorities for district improvements within Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. We are familiar with this as we shared this at our last meeting. Our updated 2-phase process for the Comprehensive Data Review is reflected here. To support the Board of Education setting these priorities, we continue Phase 2 of the Comprehensive Data Review in our session today. Phase 2 includes a review of the 2023 bond projects, a 10-year forecast review, and the evaluation of successful and equitable choice programs. In order to establish these things, we will provide all data relevant to goals A through E in board policy. In our time together today, we will walk through the numerous data sources and facilitate discussion on the way in which the data is aligned to board policy goals A through E. As mentioned, Mr. Ivy will lead an activity on the implementation timeline for previously approved bond projects. Finally, we will hear from Mr. Cropper's report on the CMS demographic study and leave time for questions and answers from members of the Board of Education. Including a deeper look into these reports ensures that our 24-25 comprehensive data review is inclusive of all relevant goals and data points, such as the evaluation shared by Magnet Schools of America in our last Board of Education meeting. As we engage in activities today, we ask that the room follow a small number of agreements to support the integrity and intention behind the work. Our agreement for today's meetings come from Glenn Singleton and his work on having courageous conversations. These agreements should be applied for the sake of our activities today. So I ask that you stay engaged, which is an important component of the task today, which I know it's a 4-hour planned meeting, but we ask that you stay engaged the entire time. Embrace discomfort. And so let me just say that it's intentional that we stretch beyond our comfort zones, which is the work of the board for the comprehensive data review. And then absolutely in this activity, you will speak your truth and expectations. Expect and accept non-closure today. The goal today is not to have finalized decisions. The goal today is to gather more additional information so as you come back together on December 10th, you can direct the superintendent with your priorities. This is merely a starting point. So we have given you this great binder that you all enjoyed receiving on November the 12th. And you have them today. Congratulations on bringing them back. There's 8 sections to the binder. So just want to remind you that we have 8 sections of the binder. However, today we will focus on 3 sections of the binder, even though the work is intertwined. So we'll focus on section 1, which is our policy, which will lead all of our meetings and work. Section 4, facts and figures, 1-pagers, alphabetical and projects by year. And then section 8, our forecast report by Mr. Cropper, who is here from Cropper Genetics. It is also important to note that all resources provided at our November the 12th Board of Education meeting and the resources provided today are publicly displayed on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Comprehensive Data Review website. Here you can see a snapshot of the homepage of the Comprehensive Review website. As a reminder, the website includes specific pages to support both Phase 1 and Phase 2. Information from Phase 1 was moved over to the new website, as well as links to the 2023 bond project. These are commonly used terms, frequently asked questions, in any presentations provided thus far. This is a one-stop shop for all things related to the Comprehensive Data Review for the 24-25 project. The recording of November the 12th is also on our website, and the recording for December the 10th will be displayed as well. I know our communications department here is recording today as well. So with your resources at hand, we will now begin our activity. Let me just, you have the notebook, you have the website, and we also have a QR code that you can link to as well to have access to our website. So all of those are ways for you to gather the data for today. All right, so if you're using your binders, our first activity today will be using section 1, S-ASGP, Policy and Data Summary. We have provided an updated data summary document for your use today. Updates made to this summary may include, and so if you want to go to your binder, and there's actually a fresh copy in a folder that's also at your place as well.
I'm gonna go with the same information I'm using my laptop.
That's absolutely fine. It's been updated on the website. You're welcome to use your visual files.
Yeah, this is a lot.
Okay, so an updated link and table for the 24th. So one of the things that came out of our November 12th meeting was feedback from the board. We have an updated link and table for the 24-25 lottery results. The link that was previously included on the website was the 23-24 lottery results. So while the table displayed the 24-25 data, we did make an adjustment to that table as well. We appreciate Ms. Easley bringing this to our attention, as this was an error. In addition, the team noticed an error displayed for the North Mecklenburg Culinary Program. Previously, we noted there were no students currently enrolled in the program, while the program contained a wait list. We reviewed the information to find that there are currently 23 students seated in the program at North Meg and 7 students on the wait list. Due to the low number of waitlisted students, this item was removed from the table of programs with significant waitlist. A second update made to the document was our description and data link for our CT program. Our new executive director, Mr. Brett Buchanan, pointed out that the stronger information to include in this summary report is that the 15 CT career clusters are offered by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction are also utilized here at the district level in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. These career clusters are the umbrella for each of our pathways in CMS. A third update made was the school performance priority flyer. As you are aware, our lottery process for the 25-26 school year opened this week, Monday, November 18th. On the previous copy of your data summary document, we only included 1 year school performance priority information. With the lottery opening this week, we have added the school performance flyers for the 24-25 school year as well as the 25-26 school year. All right, so it's time for us to get into our first activity of the afternoon. Over the next hour and a half, we're going to take a closer look at the summary findings of the data most closely aligns to policy X-ASGP. As is apparent from our website binder and multiple research partners, there is a lot of data to consider within this review. Today, I will present a high level of district-determined best support for you as you prioritize needs for the district and next steps. In Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, our school and district teams commonly use notice and wonder, a protocol to support collective thought, critical thinking, and the exploration of new resources. While we frequently use this practice as staff members, this method is also used by students in the classroom, K-12. In fact, if you'll notice from this picture, Dr. Hill and I completed school visits in celebration of beginning of the year early literacy data just yesterday. We were at Lebanon Road Elementary School, and they happened to be utilizing this protocol, notice and wonderings. So I just want to highlight that it's appropriate for kindergarten students all the way through their senior year, and we also use it as faculty and staff as well. So I just want to lift that up. They were preparing to start their weather unit, which is appropriate as the weather has changed outside. So in true Charlotte-Mecklenburg fashion, I'd like to use this protocol for you today. In short, this strategy is a simple way to make observation and pose questions as a lead into deeper analysis of the topic at hand. So here's an example. Let's quickly walk through a couple of them. As I present data summaries to you today, I will ask you to use the sticky notes in front of you to write your notices and wonderings. Do you all see your sticky notes? These notes will be added by policy goal to the posters around the room. When writing a noticing, you should think about what stands out to you about what was presented. What pieces of information are new or notable? A notice is an observation, a fact. As we share notices, we will keep our statements as just that. Statements about the information presented, not a question or an opinion. Let's look at an example. What stands out to you about what was presented? What pieces of information are new or noticeable? So when you look at this data, if you're doing a noticing, you would look at the data and think about what is factual in this data. This slide you'll actually see later and get to discuss, but we're using it for purposes now as an example. So you maybe would say in your group, I noticed that almost 60% of our families are medium or high SES households. So here, we have another data point. We're going to look at a wondering. As data is presented to you, what questions arise in relation to phase 2? The difficult part of this piece of the protocol is that my wonder needs to be in relation to the topic at hand. So you have to stay narrow and focused, and we'll get to do this for every goal as a part of the policy. We know there's a lot of important information to cover, so we know there's a lot to be said about every data point presented. To support you as a board member, as you collect information that will help you develop your list of priorities on December the 10th, we ask that you focus on how this data supports that work. Your wondering should help you get closer to setting these priorities. So let's look at this example. So, data point, mobile usage report. Data description, mobile and modular units provide additional space for learning and teaching. Currently, with our mobile usage of 1,226 mobile and modular units on our school campus, we're at 98.6%. 41 of the 1,226 mobile or modular units are not in service. On average, it costs $181,000 to move or install a mobile unit. Mobile units are associated with multiple expenses, including moving expenses and utilities. So this is something that you may wonder about. So you may decide, as a wondering, on average, if it costs $181,000 to move or install a mobile unit, I wonder what priority can we set to reduce the cost of mobile usage expenditures? So do you see the difference between a notice and a wondering?
Yes. Can you go back to the notes? I'll just write down to make sure, just to keep me on track.
Yes, sir.
I had the part about what stands out to you about what was presented, but there's a second piece here.
What piece of information is new or notable? So for you, as you're learning and reviewing the information, there may be a piece that you weren't aware of that you maybe would want to lift as a noticing for the group.
Thank you.
So, as you do your independent thought, which we'll do that in just a moment, you will engage in these steps and listen to the summary findings of S-ASGP supporting data points. You will use your sticky notes to informally write what you notice about the data point as we go through the different pieces of data. So for example, I noticed that 3 schools are underutilized, or under 40% utilized. That's a data point that you'll see later. Again, just giving examples. I noticed that almost 60% of our families are medium or high SES households. So those would be examples of notices. Then you would use your sticky notes also to write your wonderings down as we go through the information. I wonder what impact a new school build will have on boundaries for neighboring schools. I wonder what priority we can set to reduce costs for mobile usage expenditures. So now we'll begin our group work. So step 3 is your discussion protocol. After each goal's data set is presented, you will have 7 minutes in your group of 3. Everyone remember their group? Okay. You will have 7 minutes in your group for discussion. For your notices, each group member will share their most significant noticing. One person will share one noticing at a time and move to the next. Groups may go one or more than one round of noticing within this time. So if you're able to go quickly, then you can go around for another round in your group of notices and wonderings. The same protocol will apply for your wonderings. One person will share one wondering at a time and move to the next. Groups may go one or more than one round of wondering within this time frame. So in other words, it's a quick paced process. 7 minutes, total process. Following the notice and wondering protocol, the board member small groups will engage in a 6-minute discussion to further unpack the data summary. Their notices and wonderings to ultimately answer how will this data inform your decisions within phase 2 of the comprehensive review. Your timekeeper will keep track of the timer as it plays on the main screen. So those folks that I highlighted earlier will be your timekeepers and will support you in any questions you may have about the protocol. Your scribe will make sure to capture 1 to 3 priority conclusions drawn from the discussion. We have not provided an example of our primary conclusion as we do not want to influence the direction of your discussion. So each group will share their most significant noticing, that's 1 minute. Each group member will share their most significant wondering, 1 minute per group member. And then each small group will engage in a discussion to answer the synthesis questions. How will this data inform your discussions within phase 2 of the comprehensive data review? Each group scribe will capture their primary conclusions on their team's note catcher. And the note catcher is in your folder. So if you will look in your folder and make sure you have that. And I'll ask the assistants to go and help our groups, make sure they can find their resources.
So if we, this is our most significant one you're gonna notice, but where we have more than one.
So the goal, thank you, that's a great question, Mr. Rankin. So you have a short period of time, 7 minutes to complete this activity. So the goal would be to move through the process faster so you can get to another round of notices of wonder.
Okay.
The last bullet of this portion is that each small group will engage in discussion to answer the synthesis question. This is the most important thing. So we can write all the things in the sticky note, but the most important part of this activity each time is that your group comes back together and you have a conversation. How will this data inform your decisions within phase 2 of the comprehensive data review? Remember, goal A had lots of data points. So I paused the timer because we're such a great group, we probably need a few more minutes, and this is our first one. So we'll give ourselves more than 2 minutes to do this. I'm gonna back it up, we'll give ourselves 4 minutes to do this piece.
What's supposed to go on here?
Your summary comments for goal 1, the piece that you're getting ready to do now. The piece that you're gonna do now is how will each small group engage in discussion to answer this question, how will this data inform your decisions within phase 2 of the comprehensive data review? Okay, so we're gonna go to goal B right after we share it at a high level. We're not gonna discuss. Who's the spokesperson for each group? Raise your hand. Dr. Witherspoon, are you the spokesperson?
I am.
Okay, so would you like to share for goal A, primary conclusions from your group?
We have 4.
That's fine.
Mind you, this is not my handwriting.
Yeah, sorry.
We don't provide equitable access through location and transportation. Needs assess, number 2, needs assess program interest and success, not,
All are oversubscribed.
huh?
Not all are oversubscribed.
Not all are oversubscribed, and we have too many options. Number 3, we fail in marketing and digital assets don't clearly market and provide easy instruction, and we out of the forefront of Germany. Lack of training and funding to support things successful.
Okay. All right.
So, I have a question. So we're not saying, I feel like I'm missing a piece,
Okay.
right? So, not to pick on Darren's people, but they went first, right? So they said all, which I think is one of the things we had, all programs or the utilization is not the same. Some,
That's
those are
right.
magnet
That's
school
very similar to
programs.
what you just said.
Right,
That's
some of the magnet school programs have huge wait, some have huge wait lists, and then some are underutilized.
That's correct.
But is there an additional piece that we're supposed to say in that comment?
No, that,
That's-
because
we
what'll
just say
happen, because what'll happen as the 3 groups come together, we're gonna synthesize from the 3 groups and look for the common themes.
Just, yeah, we are too.
So that's
Hold
just
on
your,
one second before
it
we
doesn't
leave.
have to be, remember we said in our agreement today, it was not gonna be a complete process or a complete thought. We're now getting to group 1. They talked about marketing needs to be better, that we don't have equitable access in programming, which is what I heard you also say, and I can't remember the others.
Yeah.
But we'll go to group 2 and let you present if
Just
you're
for
ready.
clarity, when they use the word utilization, when we talk about utilization, are we talking about utilization of the program, or are we talking about utilization of the building?
In this one, go away, they have to be talking about the program
I
because,
just want to make sure.
the building is not in this.
We actually did use the word utilization, we said oversubscribed.
Okay. So that's a good call out, thank you for holding us
Oh,
accountable,
still my-
because the protocol should not be talking about utilization at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about the program, that's right.
Sorry.
Okay. Group, okay, middle group, are you ready to present?
Yes.
Okay,
So one of the things we talked about is STEM programming is not distributed equitably. There are only 2 programs that are district-wide, and both of those are in the South.
okay,
The other thing is there's a disparity gap of the number of students, on the wait list. The same thing they talked about. Some programs some programs have high wait lists, some are, I say utilized.
okay.
They're
Undersubscribed.
undersubscribed.
Okay, undersubscribed.
And the same type of program is not available throughout the district. And
Okay,
the other one I'm gonna add on here too is like, how is transportation affecting magnet school participation?
okay, thank you, group two. Who's the spokesperson for the last group? Ms. Klein?
The first one, the information on the website is not parent-friendly to education-friendly.
Okay.
Therefore, it leads to communication and advertising continues to be an issue. The next one, transportation continues to be an issue, which defines program accessibility. And then finally, many magnets are varied, but are not intentional in pathways and viability.
Okay, so before we go to our next section, I'm gonna give y'all a round of applause, that was a tough one.
You made it.
The other thing that I'm gonna say is, are you beginning to see how each group has similar things?
Yeah.
And so when we finish this whole process, we're gonna synthesize as others are presenting, and we're gonna come back to you at the end to say, did we capture your big rocks that you lifted? Because I've already heard some common themes from each group. Did you hear them?
Yes.
So that's where we're going. So this is gonna be tough work. It's not gonna be clean. You're not gonna have clear conclusions, but you're gonna walk away thinking, we're all thinking about this thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the goal of today. So that was a tough one, but good job.
You made it.
It'll get easier. All right. Okay, so we're on B. One of our advanced groups wanted to go to B, but we're on B now officially as a collective group. So I want to say that we're now on B. Let's look at all the data points. Take a moment to pause, because this is going to be a big one as well. As we get later to D&E, there'll be fewer. But you have a lot of data points. To Mr. Rankin's point earlier, I want to call out, we're only focused on these data points. So you can't jump to something else you already know from looking at data. We're going to focus on student membership, enrollment by grade, transportation efficiency, boundary changes, mobile usage document, 10-year forecasting trends, bond projects, capacity and utilization data. So let's go through these quickly. So 24-25, schools on the standard CMS academic calendar completed their reporting months on the following dates. And so this is our student membership data. And so you have this information to look at, our enrollment trends with membership data. This is enrollment by grade, race, and gender. You want to look at things about where do we have larger groups of students moving through the K-12 process, the continuum, looking at racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds as well. Enrollment by grade, race, and gender, total enrollment, 141,700. Transportation efficiency ratings report. You'll see on this chart, there are 2 years that it's not reported. We know that's because of the pandemic, but you can see the transportation efficiency ratings in 2012 to 2013, and then in 23-24, 96.3, 91%. Boundary changes. Boundary adjustments help our schools align resources, facilities, and staffing with enrollment trends and population growth. Neighborhoods, new neighborhoods, boundary changes are implemented to optimize enrollment balance, reduce overcrowding, and ensure equitable access to educational resources. You see here boundary changes, elementary, we have 82% of our schools utilized, middle school 87%, high school 104%. We did not include full magnet schools in these figures because they do not have attendance boundaries. So meaning that every child in that school had to apply for a magnet seat. It's not in an attendance boundary. Northwest School of the Arts would be a great example of that. Utilization was calculated using PMR1, which is Principal's Monthly Report. K-8 schools are counted as middle school calculation for the purposes of this information. We talked about this. This was an example that we went over earlier, so you already know that we have 1,226 mobile and modular units being utilized, which is 98.6% of our resources here for this program. And then our 10-year forecasting trend. We use that to forecast student enrollment, to make decisions about attendance boundaries, to develop effective school boundary plans, and making informed decisions to accommodate growth and optimize resource allocation. And you'll hear a lot more detail about that from Mr. Cropper later. And then our bond project, which Mr. Ivey has continued to talk about, and we'll talk about, supports construction of new schools, renovating existing buildings, and improving athletic facilities. The 2023 bond will also support efforts to reduce overcrowding by building new schools in rapidly growing areas. This is the information that was shared on November the 12th that we'll talk about even in more detail, but this example of the timeline for our bond projects. Capacity and utilization, so we joked about using the word utilization in the previous goal A. It is appropriate to discuss in goal B. So we have our overutilized schools, 90% at or above. And so you'll have this information as well as in your packet, but you see them here. We have our underutilized schools, elementary. So 60% or below. Overutilized middle schools. Underutilized, 60% or below for middle. High school. Underutilized. We know that Hawthorne and Waddell have specialty programs. The other thing that I want to lift up, that, and you all know this, but I just want to lift this up. Waddell holds 2 programs. They hold PACE and Charlotte Virtual Academy. So even with those 2 programs and students combined, they're still underutilized facility. Membership data again. Okay, so we know how to do our protocol. This says goal A, my apologies, it should say goal B. But we're doing the same activity for goal B. So now you're gonna do your notices about the data presented. Then you'll do your wonderings about goal B data that we just talked about and how this data will inform your decisions around this goal. Mr. Raymond.
Just, a lot of our data is around utilization. Can you just for clarity, so we can make sure we're looking at the right data, make sure we're looking at it properly, can you talk through or have someone talk through the difference in capacity
That's a great
and
question.
utilization?
That's a great question.
And how those numbers are found?
Okay, so capacity is based on teaching spaces in the school. So we take out for capacity the auditorium and other things, but actual classroom spaces in the schools. And depending on the school, so if it's an elementary school, we may calculate a class, I think K3 is calculated 1 to 20. And then 4 through 12, because there's no cap on the class size, is calculated 1 to 25. So every teaching station in a middle school, for example, we would count 25 students per classroom. And then we multiply that times the number of classrooms. And so that's how you get capacity. Utilization is determined on gross capacity. So we just simply say if we've got 700 kids in the school and the capacity is 500, then we do that mathematical formula to say we're over capacity. Because if we've got 700 kids in the school that should hold 500, we know we're over capacity, which means we're overutilizing that building.
So utilization is not based on classrooms.
It is.
Utilization is based on classrooms.
That's what I'm saying.
So it does not include mobile units. It's brick and mortar classrooms. Am I answering your question?
You know you are, so if it's a school that has 100 classrooms, then we know based on this, what should we say, 2,500 is the max? Because you're supposed to only have
That's
20,
right.
it's only have 25 in each classroom, if you go by the ratio,
Right.
correct?
That's right. And we know that there's no high school that has 25 kids sitting in the classroom. But that's what we would use, for example, to allocate students and those sorts of things. And so that's why we use that number. The reality is that we probably have about 30 plus students in a high school classroom. But that's what we allocate on. That's why you have schools that have more than that number and they're still able to make it work. Does that make sense?
No, it does, but then, we look at it, we're talking about capacity, we're comparing the number of staff members you have.
Staff has nothing to do with it. It's
So it's
literally
one ratio. Oh,
No.
facilities?
It's all about facilities, both of these numbers. It's about the number of teaching stations, So if it's a high school, we would say 25, like you just said, the 2,500. That's the capacity of the school, 100 classrooms, 25 students in each classroom. Utilization, if we have 100 teaching stations, and we have
I'm sorry, I just am worried that all these things that you're saying right now, there's going to be 15 million questions. So can we pause just for a minute? Okay, can you start over?
Yes. So Mr. Rankin gave a really good example. So if we have a high school with 100 classrooms, I think West Charlotte has 100 classrooms. And if we calculate that we would have 25 students in each of those classrooms as we're planning, that would be 2,500. And while that's easy math, that's really the number. Because after third grade, there's no capital class size, so we calculate at 25. That's ideal, but you're gonna have more kids in the classroom. With 25, so 25 times 100, for those 100 classrooms in West Charlotte, it's 2,500 students would be their capacity. Right?
Their capacity. But when we
But
talk,
if they have 3,000 students at West Charlotte, then we would do the 3,000 and the 2,500 and get how much they're over utilized.
Utilization.
Because we only do brick and mortar. But they may not feel it because we may have those $181,000 modular mobile units that it costs to move. We may have 10 or 15 of those at that school.
gotcha.
Okay.
It helps.
All right, so, yes, sir.
Just one question, with the, like, EUIL, they got the virtual academy, right? Why do those students count?
So we counted those, that's a great question. Dr. Witherspoon asked why we counted virtual kids at EYL, because we're starting to bring the kids in for activities. So we need to make sure that we have spaces for them, and the teachers actually work at the school. So we don't want to take their space from them, and then if they decide to bring all their kids in for testing, they need to have a space for them.
That school's not listed.
EYL is on one of the spreadsheets is underutilized. If it's missing on something else, let us know. All right, so we're going to start the timer. This is goal B. I think we are really clear about what we're doing now with goal B, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you for those questions about capacity utilization, great questions, and the wider questions, great to clarify that. All right, so I'm gonna start the timer. Mr. Rankin was ahead of us on this one. Mr. Rankin, socioeconomic school data is what our focus will be for goal C, to reduce the number of schools with high concentrations of poor and high needs children. So the socioeconomic data reveals the student body's demographic and economic makeup, offering insights into income levels and other factors impacting learning. This information helps schools identify challenges, allocate resources effectively, and create targeted programs to support diverse students, promoting equity and enhancing educational outcomes. We talked about this as our example, so we already know that we have over half or 60% of our schools that are higher middle SES, or our student population. So we're going to start our protocol with goal C. What do you notice about the data presented? What do you wonder about the data presented? How will this data inform your decisions around this goal? I will say before I start the timer, there's one thing here that lifts up how important this is to the policy and to the work. So I will start the timer. Please quickly jot your notices down, your noticings, and your wonderings. You have 1 minute for each. All right, so we'll go with Mr. Rankin's group. All right, we can come back together. We're on goal C. This has one data point, which was SES, and so this group is going to share first.
All right, so ours is exploring the adjustment of boundaries to balance SES, to identify neighborhoods where it can be more, it says more possible on here, but they can be,
I said where, it's my handwriting,
Yeah.
sorry. I say identify, adjustment of boundaries to balance SES. Pretty much like identify neighborhoods where it's possible to do, because we know some neighborhoods are.
oh yeah,
You can't do it.
Okay.
all right. The second one is finding out what the trend and forecasting of high, medium, low SES in the district. Like what it looks now, like over time and forecasting in the future. Like are we becoming more of a high SES district, or like what does that look like? And the last one is data that shows what balancing SES does to the impact that it has on school performance.
Is that a conclusion or a wonder?
I know.
These are high level fault, got turned into.
Balance.
Conclusion?
No,
Is that
they're
the
their
data
fault.
receipts?
Their fault. No, it's no catcher, so they're still, they're good. All right.
SES.
Y'all, the Witherspoon, you ready?
Yes.
You can come back down.
No, school.
We think, I don't know. You're here. Yes, similar. You're similar, but the last one's a little more, we can maybe not.
Number one, strong neighborhood schools keep population at SES unbalanced due to homeownership rental patterns in Mecklenburg County. High concentration of low SES need to become quality schools.
By looking at retention of staff.
If we're losing, evaluate if you're losing to private instruction.
So the only thing,
Evaluate for losing the private and charter school.
so the only thing that I would say is probably not aligned to that goal is when you're talking about
I know.
teacher retention.
So I looked it up.
That's what she.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. All right, good job. All right, last three.
I heard her, is it right?
All right, our primary conclusion is that the majority of CMS is comprised of lower SES. The majority of low SES are in underutilized schools. There is a need for data to determine the movement of the population. Economic movement,
Kind of what Brown was saying.
i.e. the regentrification that's occurring within Mecklenburg County and what's happening to those students and where they go.
Thank you, Angie, for that, that's there, because that would be, we're trying to pull together the thoughts to see what's talking about. So great job, look how quickly we did that one.
Wonderful.
Like, y'all get my snaps, I started kindergarten teachers, they catch your brain.
I like that.
So good job. All right,
I've seen that with little kids.
all right, so we're gonna go to D. D has 2 data points. Provide school assignment options to students assigned to schools that are not meeting performance standards established by the state. The supporting data that we have the North Carolina school report cards and the school performance priority flyer. If you will recall, this is the one that I said that we added the one for this current year that's being utilized to make lottery decisions as well. So we have the school report card that is on our website, also managed on the state DPI website as well. It provides key data on public school performance, academic achievement, growth, safety information, and teacher qualifications. Its aim is to offer transparency across the state within different districts, and it helps students, parents, and educators make informed decisions about schools and educational programs. So here is a breakdown of, as a district, our school report card letter grades. Alt, ALT with the asterisk, that's the CMA, Turning Point, and Metro. So they have an alternative performance process, and I think that Beth takes that to the board normally in the spring for approval. So they're not evaluated the same. And then we have our school performance priority flyer. This list provides alternative school options for students whose home school is identified as low performing. Through this list, students may choose via the lottery or transfer reassignment process to attend a different school that offers higher school performance. To support this process, a reasonable effort is made to ensure seats are available at these designated schools, increasing accessibility for eligible students. We currently offer school performance priority options for 10 underperforming schools. Here are the schools provided as priority opt-out. So these are the schools that get the opportunity to choose another school. And that was 24-25. Here's the positive that I know that Beth will call out, is that the list is smaller.
And that's 0 to 4-year-olds, 5 to 9-year-olds, all the way up to 85-plus-year-olds. What's going to happen with that, the whole population over the next 10, 15 years? That population forecast actually drives an enrollment forecast. And the value of the POP forecast is that it helps give us an understanding on areas where the trend may change, where you may have seen historical enrollment growth, but we're seeing that to slow down eventually, where aging happens, or maybe an area that's been stagnant and not growing, but it's starting to turn over and younger families are moving in. So that the existing population is a really critical part to understand what's going to happen with your enrollment. And the population forecast drives our enrollment forecast. In addition to that, we look at a lot of other information. We've collected school information from you guys, from your student enrollment, so we can count students on any particular street and neighborhoods and attendance areas to understand how many students are living there but not attending there, how many are attending out of the zone, how many attending in the zone, those types of dynamics which are important to understand the difference between enrollment and how many kids live in a particular area. We also got historical enrollment from you and your attendance boundary data. The census data gives us a lot of good baseline information on the total population. So at this point, we're still looking at 2010 and 2020 to see how things have changed. And IRS gives us a lot of good information on migration. So the IRS data tells us how many people are moving into this area and what is how many persons per household and what are their incomes and things like that. And then how many people are leaving this area. And so we look at the net change of what's the net of people coming in versus going out in terms of total population. And then we have the CDC and the State Departments of Health for birth and death data to help us enable our population study. In addition to this, the county government has a lot of good information on planned housing where things are being changed. And there's a lot of that going on in this district in terms of, you see down, especially in the city area, a lot of the high-rise apartments, multi-family units, and mixed-use developments and things like that going in. A lot of that was studied and analyzed as we did our enrollment forecast. I would say that our enrollment forecast, we did compare the current enrollment, and we collected that information a couple weeks ago and just did a quick assessment on the accuracy of our forecast. And we were within 69 students of the entire enrollment. So that's 99.95% accurate as it sits right now. So we feel like the forecast is holding pretty well. But talking about our POP study and how we do our population forecast, we look at a lot of different factors in order to really get an understanding of what's happening in this area. We look at births, which think of this graphic as your school district's enrollment or the total population within your school district. Births raise the level of that water, which is your population. As things are coming, adding to the population, or births in migration, or homes being built, people moving into the school district. But you also have to count for things that are leaving. So out migration, how many people that are leaving the area and moving to other parts. And then the deaths that are occurring, which raises and lowers that bucket, that level of water. So the key thing is to see what's the magnitude of the different factors that we're looking at and how does that affect that level of water. And we've in terms of total population. And we've done this for every single attendance area in your district that rolls up to a district-wide total. When we do our work, we look at a lot of factors, but number of women in childbearing age, changes in mortality, in and out migration, so those things, how many homes are being built, people moving in, but also how many people are leaving, and what's the net difference on that. And those are all basic data points that the demographers look at when they study the total population. This is a pyramid, and you'll see what we call a population pyramid, and you'll see this in the report that we have this for every single attendance area, and every single one looks different. But this tells us a lot of things about the population, the age structure and population of every individual area within your school district. The bars represent male and female. And then on the scale, each bar represents an age cohort. So the very first one on the bottom are 0 to 4-year-olds. So those are indicators for preschool age children. Total population here, not just school district, Charlotte School District students. Then we look at the next one. Those are elementary school age children, and then middle and high school. And then you can look at the next grouping of bars. Gives us an indicator on family formation. So this is the age groups that typically most likely have children, or where children are being born and they're establishing their families. The next one up is the group of cohorts that we look at, the households most likely to have children. And then you get up to higher empty nesters and turnover. So the size of these bars and the shape of these population pyramids give us a really good understanding of the existing population in each area and the age structure. And if we see a higher proportion of empty nesters, and it looks more if it looks more like a tornado where there's higher ones on top, that's telling us that eventually there's going to be some turnover and younger families are going to move in. If it looks more like a pyramid, that'd be a lot of school-aged children inside the area. And if nobody moves in or nobody moves out, you're going to see enrollment population growth. And I have some other population pyramids here to show you with the district. And in your report, there is a population pyramid for every single school, elementary attendance area. But before I get to that, I want to talk about some of the things that we can't control. So when we do our forecasting work, we do this as a basis of a demographic-based forecast. So we're telling you, based on demographics, the people who live in the area and the age structure and the migration, all those components, this is what's going to happen to your enrollment. But there are certain things that we cannot control, and these are more non-demographic factors. So we have to set some assumptions. And we look at these assumptions every time we come back and revisit enrollment to see what may have changed or what may have fluctuated to give us, that may cause error in your forecast. There are key things. These are economic, socioeconomic, and market-driven things. A key one that you'll see is the home mortgage interest rates. 30-year fixed mortgage stays below 8%. As you all know, a couple of years ago, it was 3.5%. Now it's about 6.8, I think, percent right now. And so it's gone up. If that mortgage rate jumps up to above 8%, it's basically really stalls home sales, existing home sales, the turn and churn of homes that normally happen. If that interest rate goes down into the 3s again, it's going to accelerate home sales activity. And you'll see a lot more mobility and a lot more enrollment growth is what we see. And so we have to look at these, and our feeling is that it's not going to go above 8%, and it's probably going to stay somewhere around 6%. And so that's what our feeling is on this. But if it does fluctuate higher or lower, that will affect what you're going to see in enrollment. And then we look at other things like foreclosure rates, and we look at existing homes that are platted and approved. Some other things that we have are state policy things such as vouchers and open enrollment policies. If those were to change, that will have an effect on our forecast. For example, the state of Indiana opened up open enrollment so that students are allowed to enroll outside of their district to neighboring districts, and that's caused a seismic change in the trends in the anticipated enrollments for schools, because now it opens the door for students to choose in and out of their entire school district. So something like that happens in North Carolina, that definitely can cause an impact on the accuracy of our forecast. Another thing we're looking at, we looked at existing home sales and new home sales. So I think that one of the things that really drives enrollment change and population change, not only new home construction, but existing home sales activity. And so we've looked at that and really looked at both components. Although there's a lot of new home sales and a lot of new construction going on in this district, there's also a lot of existing homes that are here that are being bought and sold. So we are assuming that you'll have at least 3,300 total new single and multifamily units per year over the next 10 years. And that's what we've seen you guys tracking historically. So these are things that we go back and look at as we assess the accuracy of a forecast. And if we start to see error, we always go back to see what non-demographic factors may be in play that are causing error in our forecast. This is the school district's 2020 census population pyramid. So you can see it looks has the bars, the children at the lower side of this pyramid are relatively stable. They're all similar in size and shape, and that tells us that each cohort is relatively the same size. We are forecasting growth in your elementary age, which is due to the increased in-migration of people moving in. But if, looking at this pyramid, if nobody were to move into your district, then it's very likely that your enrollment would probably start to decline, because you could see that 0 to 4 is slightly smaller than the 5 to 9, and that's slightly smaller than your 10 to 14-year-olds, and then 15 to 18-year-olds. And so it's relatively stable. We're not seeing as drastic of a change that's where you're so required on, so dependent on in-migration to grow. But still, if in the absence of any in-migration, your enrollment would probably decline.
I'm trying to see if you could kind of break down what the bars are. I can't see what the data is.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think that when this got translated, we lost some of the age groups and things. But this is total. This is total population. Let me see here. I can pull it up on the. Let me show you the study.
Yeah, if you go, I'm going to study myself. You can tell me what page it is. I can navigate.
Yes, sir. If you go to page 22 of the PDF, this kind of gives you a better depiction.
I see it now.
And you can see what we've done here is we've got your 2020 census and then the 2035 forecast. So you can see the left side are 0 to 4-year-olds, 5 to 9, 10 to 14-year-olds, all the way up to 85 plus. And then the size of the bar is relative to the total number of people in each age group. And so you can see from 2020, when you compare them side by side, how the population pyramid, especially for the school age population, grows. Because we are anticipating growth in this area with all the construction and all the in-migration that's happening. We are anticipating growth in this district, and overall population growth in every segment.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you could go back to the assumptions, because I was looking at what we had in front of us, but I thought I saw a couple of assumptions that were different that are listed.
Okay.
If you can go right there, high, does that now affect us because it does not change any of its current laws? So you base this on what was happening, but now they've increased the scholarship, opportunity scholarships, so that could affect vouchers. So did you base this on?
No, because that just happened 2 days ago.
I know, so this data could be outdated now.
There are factors like that. It's really hard to nail down these entirely, and it's kind of a moving target. So something like that could certainly impact what we're forecasting for enrollment.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see that in the list of assumptions.
Yes, ma'am. That's certainly in any state laws regarding vouchers or how students are funded and giving students eligibility to attend schools outside of the district or private schools, those kinds of things, that can certainly affect what we are forecasting for enrollment.
Yeah, I found it. So I and J can now affect us.
They certainly could, yes, ma'am. Any of these really could, depending on what happens with what's decided and how the economy changes over time. So it's tough to nail it down, but it's something that we want to identify so that we know what we are assuming going into this forecast. So this is your total population forecast. So you can see we have 2020 out to 2035. And this is for the entire school district. So we are seeing growth. You can see just in total population in this area. Births, the bottom parts in this table show us what we call components of change. And these are the things that drive change in population. So as you can see, we have births going up from 75,700 to 85,000 total in this district at the end of the forecast. That's due to in-migration and also things that are happening with turnover and likelihood of families moving in with children and things like that. But to counter that, the deaths are also going up because we have an aging population in this country, and Charlotte is not immune to that. And so as deaths increase, that counters the population with births coming in. It takes away from what we're looking in the population. And then the net migration, you can see we have you at net migration of 58,200 from the 2020 till 2025. That's people moving, the net of people moving out versus moving in. And in the span of this forecast, we have that pretty stable. We're assuming around similar rates of net migration coming in. Although at the end of the forecast, we are tapering it down just slightly, down to 56,000. But that's not really that significant, I would say. And we have one of these for every single attendance area, which serves as the basis of your enrollment forecast. This is your enrollment forecast for the whole district, and so you can see another thing that we did call on this forecast, which we were proud of, is something that other methods may not catch. As you can see, your last 3 years you've had enrollment increases. Your enrollment has been increasing, but this year we anticipated a drop, just a drop, and a lot of that's due to the cohorts and what we're seeing in the population, things like that. And other enrollment projection methods that just look at historical enrollment may actually have shown you growing, even going higher this year. But we did call a little bit of a drop, and then that's going to actually start tapering back up also at the end of the forecast. So that's something that our process does. It anticipates changes in the trend. It doesn't just look at your historical trends and just straight line those up. But in elementary enrollment is forecasted to drop, and a lot of this is due to COVID, because if you can see in 2020, from 2019 to 2020, the enrollment dropped in elementary quite substantially, and we've seen that across the country, about 3 to 6% drop in elementary enrollment as a result of COVID. And districts have been trying, we've been still continuing to study how people are going to rebound from COVID. We anticipated when the year it happened, or the year after it happened, that COVID, it was going to rebound really quickly, and about 75% return back quickly. But what we've seen, and this is our research and doing work all across the country, is that it's more of a gradual return back to the schools, and a lot of population, a lot of students are not coming back. But you can see you drop with COVID, and then that was kind of a ripple effect that works in your middle and high schools. But you are increasing again at your elementary enrollment. We see that going down in the next 5 years, down to about 62,800, but then it's going to pick back up, and we have that ending at almost 70,000 K-5 students by the end of the forecast.
Around the 26, 27, 28, 28, 29, that area there. What's the prediction of thinking that the enrollment's going to go down?
Well, if you look at a lot of it is, if you look at the past 3 years in your K through second grade enrollment. If you look at your kindergartners, for example, 21, 22, you had 10,700, then 10,487, then 10,377, and that trend exists in the first grade too. So that drop enrollment, those students age through, and it causes, and you end up seeing enrollment declines because of the population, because of what the smaller populations or enrollment showing up in the schools. But you could see that kindergarten enrollment that we have in the forecast, we have that ticking back up in that 26, 27 to 10,500 and 11,000 kindergartners. And that's gonna that's gonna also age itself through the system, and that's where you're starting to see the enrollment growth in the second 5-year period of this forecast. So, so it's a lot of this work and the science of this is looking at the population that's here right now and the enrollment that's here right now, and and as it ages through the system, what's going to happen to the total enrollment as those grade level cohorts go from kindergarten to first to second, and that starts to fill in all the grade levels, and you'll see it drops. So a lot of it is just the impact of decline of smaller enrollments at the earlier grades that are aging into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
But in the previous slides, it shows that the total population of the county was increasing. We had more people migrating in. Are you saying that those aren't individuals that will be having school-age kids?
Yes and no. The population's increasing. It's increasing with families with kids and school-age kids, but also a very large segment of the population growth are families or households without children. And so the total population is both households with kids and households without kids that are impacting what we're seeing in enrollment. And so you can see we are with the in-migration and the new construction and some of the redevelopment that's going on, you can see that we do have your kindergarten class size going up, and that's directly related to the impact of net in-migration and a positive in-migration coming in. In your middle school, I would say is fairly stable. It stays around 32,000 for your 6th through 8th grade, close to that number through the life of this forecast. And then your high school is also, I would say, it's definitely relatively stable, about 46,000 now. It's going to end up at about 45,000 at the end of this forecast. And one of the things, we're not fortune tellers. We can't tell, forecast enrollment down to the exact student. But one thing that we do know is in the next 5 years of this forecast are very, very high confidence levels. The second 5, it starts to get a little more iffy, and it's not necessarily due because of our methodology, but it's just because a lot of other things, non-demographic factors come into play, and things that can really fluctuate and impact enrollment. Yes, sir?
Yeah, you kind of hit on one of my questions, excuse me. There are a lot of assumptions here, and kind of clarified over the next 4 years, but what is the margin of error at any given enrollment cohort for this report to remain reliable?
We like to, our target and our goal is to be within district level 2%, within 2% of your enrollment. And that's not a compounding number. That's every year we like to compare our forecasted total to your actual enrollment. And we like to be within high or low within 2% of that. If we start to get outside of 2% range, that's when we start to look back at the assumptions and see what's going on, and it may necessitate a fresh look to see what's changed with it.
And that was my second question. Given any major change in any of the assumptions, right, will you update these numbers?
We commonly do. It's all depending on how they're tracking, or if the district feels like they'd like to have an update, we certainly can update. And we are tracking your enrollment. We're looking at your grade level data and things like that with the current enrollment and things like that. I feel like they're holding pretty well. You start getting into school level forecasts. There's a lot of things that come into play and that we can't anticipate with students enrolling and attending in and out and choice and those things that cause fluctuations in the school level forecast. But as long as the district level forecast is tracking within that 2% margin, we feel comfortable that there's still a very reliable data set to use. Yes, sir. So your total district enrollment, if you look at all levels, is forecasted to drop down to about 138,000 by 27, 28, 29. But then that is anticipated to tick back up at a pretty accelerated pace because of the in-migration that we're seeing happening right now. And that a lot of the construction and things like that are happening right now is what we're seeing affecting your enrollment in the second 5 years of this forecast. And I put together some maps just because there's so many schools and it's such a large district. It's hard to look at specific tables, and it's hard to glean things from that. So I put together some maps that show you the forecasted change in enrollment. This is the next 5 years in what we're anticipating at the elementary attendance areas. And so anything that's pink and red are areas where we're anticipating the lighter pink is up to a 10% increase in enrollment, and the darkest red is a greater than 10% increase in enrollment. And then the greens show you where we're seeing a decline. And so it's really interesting because you've got enrollment growth and enrollment decline. Sometimes they're right next to each other. It's just the nature of some of the areas and what we've seen in population. So the darkest green are the greatest declines, and then the darkest red are the greatest increases. So this is the northern part, and then the southern part of we split the map into two parts so you can see a little more detail. And this is the next 5 years. And we also have the next 10 years. So as you can see, as we showed you, your next 5 has a little bit of you're kind of weathering some of the some declines, and then it's gonna pop back up. And so you can see the 10 years shows you a lot more growth at schools across the county. And then in the southern part of the district as well, you can see there's a lot of growth scattered about, but then there are also areas where we're anticipating decline over the next 10 years.
So is that decline of, what are we assuming that, making those assumptions? Is that decline moving to charter private, or is that decline moving out of the area? Like what, or is that combined total of those two things? Like what does that decline consist of?
It's the decline is we're holding the charter enrollment and the public to private rates constant through this forecast. So really what this is the total population and what we're seeing in the total population of each attendance area, and then also factoring in the new homes being built and how many people are moving in from in-migration. And the decline is just that the aging and what's happening is offsetting in-migration. In other areas where there's growth, that in-migration is offsetting the aging.
Okay.
And then we have your middle schools as well, so you can see kind of how middle school changes the next 5 years. But like we said, more stability here, so you're not seeing as many reds in the next 5. And then this is the southern part of the district where we're seeing the next 5 for middle school forecasted enrollment. And then we have the 10-year as well for middle schools for the north. And then for the south, we're seeing a 10-year forecast for middle schools, looking at more growth at your middle schools in the southern part of the county than what we see in the northern part of your county. And then looking at high schools, this is your 5-year forecast change for high schools. So really nothing up here that's showing growth in the next 5 in high schools up in the northern part. And then the southern part, we do see some growth in your high schools in the next 5 years. And then looking at 10-year forecast, things start to turn over a little bit. Hopewell is showing some growth, and if you look at a 10-year outlook for that school, and then in the south, you see more growth than in high school than what we're seeing in the north. And I have the individual, the study, if we want to pull up any specific school, or if there's any questions that you have, there's a lot of data in here that we look at for demographic dynamics, but be happy to answer any questions you have.
So, correct me if the statement is not correct, that in the 10-year forecast, and I'm looking in the north because that's my area that I know, elementary school is very heavily projected for growth over the next 10 years, right? I've got, there's lots and lots of dark red, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would it be true then in 20 years, this would then move to middle school and then move to high school?
Very, very likely.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It's very likely that if you start looking out further beyond the 10-year window.
Not that we can, but
Yes,
if you were to, that's how you use this data.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. That's a good observation. That's correct.
So I have a question for you, and I don't know how this plays into your calculation, if any, it may make any difference. So North Carolina is the second highest in the nation for corporate housing rental. So it's like 18% of our corporate housing, our housing rental is owned by corporations. So does that have any impact on the influence of the influx of families with children? Does that play into this calculation in any way?
Well, we do look at data, the renters versus owners when we study our the total population. So let me point you to something here. I think it's in the Appendix A. These are all the population forecasts for each school. Find it. I think it's at the top. Here it is. Okay. So some of these tables really give us some good information on renters and owners and age structure. So we're assuming if it's, okay, whether it's, so corporate housing, corporations buying homes and renting them. We don't really differentiate between that or just so like if an individual were to buy an apartment complex and rent it out. We look at them the same way. We look at renters versus owners, and that helps us understand what's happening. Areas that have a higher proportion of rental units and rental housing is much more stable because what happens because rentals turn over much more frequently than existing homes and single family homes. And so what we see is that there's always going to be younger families with children typically in a rental setting. They don't age out where, like you see with single family housing, where the kids age out, mom and dad stay put, and then there's no kids there eventually. Usually in a rental setting, that turns over and you're seeing children. So we study that the ownership versus renter proportions in these, and when we do our forecast. And so I'm sorry, I don't know if that answers your question sort of in a long-winded way, but we do look at renters versus owners.
Okay. And then I have a question, it's probably more for staff. I don't know if the direct is to Dr. Balknight or Dr. Hill. So looking at the elementary districts, because this is about elementary districts forecast, and knowing that we have the 2023 bond project, and this gives projections 5-10 years out, will that have any impact, looking at this study, did it play into the impact of the order of the buildings, our construction projects?
The order?
Yes, like the order that we're doing our construction, like we know that the financing is a factor, is one of the factors, but if we're looking at this data, like the 5-year forecast out, to say this zone is gonna be this crowded, or maybe it's a reduction in the population, so does that have an impact on the order that we build schools? Because maybe this school C should now be built in order G, and maybe G needs to be order C because of the population, because we can see where the growth will be.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'll let Mr. O'Carria, who's not in here, or Mr. Ivy, if I answer this wrong. But the two main factors that are used in determining the order are logistics, meaning time to build, and how much of a shuffle you have to do. And then the second piece would be cash flow. So when I talk about shuffle, a good example would be Billingsville and Cotswold, right? You have two campuses, you essentially are gonna swing one campus to make one, and then you're gonna swing them over to build the other one, with the goal of being able to complete all of the projects within 7 years. The other one that would be a really good example would be our new, is it Second Ward High School, right? Because it's such a difficult project, that one had to be up front because it's gonna take so long for it to finish.
Let me just ask my part B. But can we do another evaluation and put it in that fact? Because I'm looking at some of the schools in our 23 bond project, and they may have a population decline within the next 5 years. So maybe it's not enough to make a difference, but maybe it is. And I know that we put tentative on the list, right?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and I think the activity that Mr. Ivy is, so it's actually worked out great that this got flipped. The activity that Mr. Ivy is going to do with you next, I think will put that into perspective. But when it is all said and done, yes, we absolutely can go back and overlay this data with it. My point is, let's take Allenbrook Elementary, for example. Allenbrook has maybe 245 students-ish, right? 245, is that right?
That is.
Okay, 245 students. Allenbrook is an off-site replacement, which means it's gonna be a capacity of 900. Right? So wherever the new Allenbrook is located, you're obviously gonna have to fill that school with students. So there will be some boundary things that are done, but maybe not for where Allenbrook is sitting right now today. Does that make sense?
That's a good example, because looking at Allenbrook and the population change between 2023 and 2028 is down.
Right, but it's an off-site replacement.
Yeah, I got you. But I'm just
But you're,
close.
but yeah, sure,
Yeah.
correct.
I think it was Lenora.
Because my question is, when you use, Cottonwood and Villansville, but there's not overutilization as a factor there, is it, I mean, from the data we've seen, but yet, when we're looking at schools, which I think is common, on the southwest, where we're talking about, I think that's what, board member, Sleep was talking about, and you see that as a great need, but yet they're lower on the list.
That's correct. So I think the thing that you have to hold in your brain as board members, I just want to make sure everybody is clear on this. The thing that we have to hold as board members is we're educators, right? We're trying to do all of this. The key piece to the bond is spend the money fast.
Right.
It's more, it has to be more financially
Right.
driven, more than so taking care of the
Right.
population. So my point is, if we curve this way and say we're gonna do this project because of population and make sure everybody has enough room, and you forsake doing this project because it's gonna take longer, then we're gonna be in a mess because we didn't build fast enough. So you can't, so I guess what I'm saying is when you look at this piece of data in isolation, you might say, the community, your constituents are gonna say, you need to address these areas faster because of population and all of those things. But your primary factor has to be how quickly you can get the projects completed in this amount of time.
Even though we have issues with student safety and buildings and limitations to things that are going on. I'm just, that's not.
I'm saying I completely agree with you, but, and while all of those things are important, we have to figure out another fix for that, because the primary, what we are on the hook for is building those projects and completing them in a set amount of time.
I hear that.
I think similar vein of questioning, and I 100% get the whole impact and effort, right? That's the continuum. I think we're just looking for impact too, because impact starts to come into this equation as we forecast out. And I think the best example is not necessarily the on-site replacements, but we have like 3 or 4 net new schools. And the order at which those go up, I feel like should be potentially evaluated based on what we see happening here with the population shifts. Just knowing that our bond is over the next 5 to 10 years, and there's definitely different shading where some of these are going versus others.
Correct, but
Yeah.
again, if we remember logistics, there's a lot of things that go into building a building straight out of the ground. A lot of the things we're held hostage to because we have nothing to do with permitting, for example. Permitting, you would think happens very quickly. Average permitting, Dennis?
Now we're running close to 10 months on a permit, believe it or not.
Right, so you can't do anything because, so that's why some of those projects may be later because we know we can't do anything because of permitting. But if there might be other projects that are already, for example, some of the projects at South Met, for example, it's a continuation. So I understand what you're saying, yes, and given this information, we will definitely go back and put it into the equation. But it's not the only thing that we have to look at because of all the factors that you mentioned. And that's going to be illustrated when Mr. Ivy does his activity. Those are all excellent things you're looking at.
And then the activity we have planned aligns with all the information that you reviewed today. So it aligns with all the sections of policy ASGP, and the comprehensive review data sheet, the large notebooks that you have, and the bond projects. And so what we're planning on doing is we want to explore the possible decisions and considerations that are associated with the 23 bond projects. We want to examine the possible decisions and considerations that need to be made in order for the project to open on its anticipated date. And we're going to utilize data from the comprehensive review to inform possible decisions and considerations for the upcoming bond projects. I just want to note that this is not intended to capture all the possible decisions because we don't have time to work through all that, but it is designed to help us look through this activity and give you a tool that you might be able to use as you plan as a board to make recommendations moving forward. Okay, so each work group will be provided a packet of information to assist. We're going to have you stay in the same groups that you were in before in completing a decision timeline, and you will be assigned a bond project using the information provided in your packet and based on policy S-ASGP. Please note on the decision timeline any decisions and or considerations that need to be made. We've allotted approximately 10 minutes or until the groups essentially finish their timeline. So this is what the timelines look like. We have copies of them for each project. We also have blank copies for you that we'll hand out in just a minute as your group facilitators come to your groups. So here's middle school number 1. We want to give an illustration of some of the things that were considered with this project. And these decisions have already been made. So we just wanted to give you an idea of how it kind of looks with the one-pagers. So things you might want to consider. The anticipated opening date, August of 2026. Is it a magnet? No. What are the neighboring schools? You want to look at the capacity, the enrollment, mobile units, etc. This information that's listed there on those one-pagers. Also, other information that was considered was a number of classrooms, enrollment, estimated enrollment for the year that it was going to open. We also looked at the utilization of the building, staffing. And so on the timeline that you're going to receive, you will have the project name listed, the anticipated date that it will open, the school year that is planned to open. We will also then have, and it goes for a 2-year time period in quarters. So the new boundaries for middle school number 1 were decided in quarter 2 of 2023. We also have the date when the new principal will be named. So these are kind of examples of what you'll be writing down, and all this information is guided. You have a facilitator who will work with you, and will help you work through your timeline. Okay, so let's get ready to start. Each group's going to be provided a facilitator. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to find the one pagers. I know I saw it earlier, but in the website.
On phase 2, if you click phase 2, you'll be there. And you scroll down, the electronic ones will be there. And we actually have copies of the ones you'll need for these projects here, so you don't have to do any of that. We provide all materials for you. Okay, so in your groups, before you begin, we just want to note that you do have a couple of roles. We need to have a scribe, which can be the same person that was the scribe for your previous one, or you can shift that role. And we need somebody who's willing to present your timeline once completed.
So we had Harding, and so that is slated to open by August 23rd. So going back to Q3, July, September 2028, we asked from staff recommendation of programming, possible programming change. And then in the Q4, analysis of the surrounding elementary and middle schools. Q1 of 2029, and community engagement for boundaries, feeders, and programs. I'm gonna just put in Q2, Q3, start thinking about those design changes that may impact, that we can still impact based on that feedback. And then in Q3, talk about boundaries, feeder patterns, and programs. And then that's all we got. The rest is breakground and instruction. All right.
Anything you want to add before we move on? This is really good. Okay. Do you guys want to go next?
I'll defer to.
I'll give you advice.
Okay, then what we said.
So we have Allenbrook, which is slated for August 2029.
You said, do we even?
Well, I think there's a lot of, it says naming a principal in January of 2029, just based on looking at the surrounding schools. We actually think there are magnet decisions that have to be made prior, because it's actually flanked by 2 magnets. And I think that will cause boundary decisions to shift pretty drastically depending on what we decide. So my recommendation is we do that in like 25 or 26, just knowing you have to figure out the feasibility of what the programming is. Right now, there's only 242 kids in this school, and it's a 900 capacity building. So we're concerned about the feasibility and the investment here without making the proper decisions around the surrounding schools, 2 of which are magnets. There's only 1 school in the area that touches their attendance boundary that's slightly over capacity, and that's Whitewater Academy.
We had a lot of questions about it. Yes, and Thomasboro, but we had a lot of questions about, do we have enough students? What are they talking about? I think it's a attendance issue here, to look at a school with 900 capacity and we don't have. Do we have a draw? Where are we bringing those kids from to create 9, even begin to feel this?
And we were saying boundaries should be decided in like Q1 of 2028.
Yeah.
Q1 of 2029, you name the principal if they were slated to open in August, but there's a lot of upfront work that actually needs to be done prior to this.
So it's a big question about this school and the funding going to open the school even. And we have to 2029? Okay.
Great insight. Thank you. Okay.
So we had new middle school 2 up in the north, two, up in the north part of the county. I was like, that wasn't me. I was like,
This isn't fair, we got her here.
So Q3, July, September of 2027.
When is the project?
It's middle school 2 is opening August 2028.
Okay.
So Q3, July, September, starting to get community engagement, principal qualities, starting construction. Those are kind of that first step. Q4, we have interviewing principals, getting them hired, getting the AP, your leadership influence. principal named, and then the boundaries are determined. Those are kind of quarter 1, quarter 2, because this is a brand new school. So we have to set up the elementary school boundaries that feed it, the feeder patterns that go into the middle school, as well as looking at relieving the overcrowding of the 2 middle schools that the intent is to do. So we need to have feeder patterns, and then we need to discuss where this is going to high school, because we don't know yet, and our high schools up there are fully utilized already, so we're gonna have to move some, there's gonna be ripple effects that we're gonna have to look at. Quarter 3, July and September, quarter 2, we would start the beginning of the boundaries, so start having those. But no, yeah, there's not a magnet of this. This is a neighborhood school. It is needed as a relief school. There's no need for a program up there yet with this school. The boundaries then would come over to quarter 3, that July, September. We would finalize. So the beginning would be quarter 2, quarter 3 would be finalizing the boundaries, voting on it for us, transportation, all of those things. And then beginning of quarter 4, we would start admin, finish with admin and staffing, getting them solidified in there and starting to build the school culture and continue that going through until August when they're ready to go. We didn't quite finish, we got most of it done.
What about naming?
That would be under school, starting all of those and the principal naming and all of those things would all be part of school culture.
The year before.
The year before.
Naming the school?
Yeah.
Rankin Elementary?
Right after Easley
Rankin
Elementary.
Middle School.
Easley Middle School, there we go. Easley Middle School, Rankin Elementary, yeah.
Okay, well, you guys did a great job. Give yourself a round of applause. Now, let's kind of summarize and finish up. We did provide you with a blank copy of a blank decision timeline, and wanted to let you know that all of these decisions are, of course, rooted in board policy. So here are the things that policy A or policy S-ASGP specifically calls out that we need to consider, and many of these things were brought up in your conversations. And so we talked about continuous boundaries, we talked about home, several of you mentioned like transportation, so home to school district, distance, impact on feeder patterns, socioeconomic diversity, utilization. We also talked about the feasibility of working through the board's goals, especially with magnet programs, keeping neighborhoods assigned to the same school, projections on growth, demographic shifts. I mean, all of these things mentioned here, which come off of the policy, were mentioned in your conversations. And so we really just wanted to have this as an example for you. Now, we bring this slide back up because as you see the conversation when we started about one school or one program stemmed and went into many other scenarios and other schools surrounding those, when you think about the timeline that we've got right now for our bond projects, you have to think if we're going to be doing 5 projects in 26, 27, the considerations and decisions that go along with that is the timeline kind of help show that they need to happen way in advance for us to be able to successfully open these schools on their anticipated dates. So that was really the point of the exercise. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you need additional or digital copies, we'll be glad to get those to you. So thank you very much.
I have one observation on that committee. I'm looking at this back in school report and thought of persistent challenges even since the last report in 2013. That kind of serious conversation about as a thought on our back school program. I think we talked about it, but I just wanted to reiterate that.
I couldn't hear, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, we need to, I was saying, given the consistent challenges that were on magnet schools since 2015, and even with this report, that we really need to I'm hoping that both the board and administration will do some serious consideration about the future about magnet schools. We kind of talked about it, but I just wanted to lift that up.
So, board members, this is your time. Thank you for looking at Dr. Witherspoon. This is your time. We received all our comprehensive review data. So this is the time in these next 2 weeks, yeah, about 2 weeks. You have an opportunity, questions, any further questions will be due.
24. Even visit, I mean, 5 p.m. or 59. What did I say?
The questions, any
Questions.
additional questions due in advance of our meeting?
We usually say closed business, but you all know we'll honor any collective nights.
Close of business November
Collective
24th.
nights.
That's on Sunday. That's Sunday, that's the day.
That's Sunday.
That's on
Sunday.
Sunday, but remember, the point of this exercise is for us to tell staff what our priorities are. So if it's magnet schooling, what components of magnet school, like can't just say it's do something with magnet schools, what kind of direction we're looking at. It's an evaluation program, it is whatever those things. So those are the things that we'll be deciding on December 10th. But that was the purpose of this exercise. If that's what's the glaring top priority, then that's something we have to decide as a board.
Chair Sneed, I have questions on the logistics of the December 10 meeting, like how are we presenting these recommendations?
You'll be notified of that in advance. It'll be facilitated.
Okay.
So it'll be facilitated just much like how we did the goal 4 for the goal 4 and determining those parameters for goal 4. We went through a facilitation process. It'd be the same. It'd be the same.
Using Robert's Rules of Orders to direct the motions, or?
Yes. I mean, yeah, we always use Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah. I mean,
But
okay.
we'll talk about the format. That's not quite worked out how we're gonna do that yet, because we just need to go through this process first, but you'll be informed of a clear format of how we're going to do it, but it will be facilitated.
I just want to continue to send in questions, because I have some that I can just send those in based on what we've done.
By the 24th.
Right.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And so the next time will be at the board meeting, where we will convene again on those topics, of course.
Well, the questions, all the questions should be answered, right, before the 24th, because it's no new data that's going to be presented on the 10th. We're not getting any more new data. We've gotten everything. Unless whatever you get, like you need to submit those questions by the 24th, but we would have gotten everything, and then the next step will be for us to set the priorities of what we want staff to do as a part of this comprehensive data review. I will remind you all that the one thing that we're required to do, that we have to do is, those things that are associated with the bond project.
Right.
So, is anything outside of that? So the comprehensive review theoretically would be like, we're just going to deal with all of those things of boundaries, programming that have to deal with the bond schools, bond projects, and it can be that and something else, or that and nothing.
So we will not have an opportunity to ask last minute questions at the board meeting.
You should submit I don't know.
That's just 2 days from now.
Yeah.
I need to sit with this more than 48 hours, right? So I'll get some in, I know, but I might not get through all of this and have all my questions and have all my, in 2 days. So is there going to be an opportunity to still ask questions on the 10th? I want to clarify what you just said, because you said that there should be no more questions.
It should be, because we've had all of the presentations.
Okay.
It should be, but, if there is,
Fine, that's fine.
if there are glaring questions, we can still have a question answer period, but would like to know what the topic area is, so we can make sure that we have the appropriate staff ready, if that makes sense. If you have questions about the forecasting, then that's a different set of people to ask.
Right, no, I understand that,
Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, if it's been captured here, is that part of that too? Because there were questions and things we put here, I wondered, there weren't any questions, but
You put questions on your notice and wonderings?
No, the wonderings.
We're waiting for answers.
When is this data coming out?
I'll be happy to answer that. I just wanted to see if there were any more questions specific to what was shared today.
And this was what was shared, yeah.
Well, any more questions about the data that was presented today? And then I'll wrap up about, yes.
I know, I did put the request in, but if possible, I think I'm supposed to share
Yes.
about
Yes.
the Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, and that'll be sent to the full board.
So, Vice Chair Rankin asked, like, the charts and graphs that were in our electronic, they're PDFs, we just asked for it in Excel spreadsheet, so that's what's gonna be sent to
It was
everybody.
easier.
If you wanna navigate through an Excel
Also, we're gonna
spreadsheet.
get it in Excel digitally?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Okay.
I think the thing I think a missing piece is, and I'm trying to think how to say this, is everything we do has a financial impact. And there's also financial impacts associated with a lot of the data that we review that I don't have a good grasp on. For instance, when we have schools under capacity, we're probably investing more in those kids than we are necessarily kids that are over capacity, right? Because to some extent, infrastructure costs are somewhat fixed, right? And the variable costs are associated with teachers. So same with Magnet Schools of America's report, there was a request that you need to fund correctly. And what I don't know is, like, are we funding correctly, or what does it mean to fund correctly, right? So I think those also have to go into the factors that, and maybe next steps is we're just gonna give you guys directive to go do some of that. But I think one of the challenges that we are now facing as a board is a lot of previous boards made a lot of requests without thinking about the financial impact. And we are in a very constrained environment, which is probably gonna get tighter. So the one thing that I may request is that it may be more directive to figure out financially what that means too. Because I think a lot of times things are requested and we don't do them 100% because we don't have the money to. Because you can't divide a dollar 10 ways and expect the same thing when it's divided 5. And that kind of feels like where we are with some of what we're seeing in the comprehensive data, the imbalances and inequities. So I think that's just a lens I'm gonna lift up that I'm struggling with, because like with an open checkbook, we could do all these things, right? But the reality is, I think we also have to use that lens too.
Yes.
Nothing about that, okay. A couple things. I know we submit our questions using the form by the 24th. We have a deadline. There's a date where we will receive those answers, the responses. Will there be a second round to say if we have any questions about some of the responses? Should we wait till the 10th, or should we also just say submit those as if it's a part of our, the 11-day rules or like that before the meetings, just to give staff more time if there are any follow-up questions to the responses?
Yeah, so I just want to lift that between now and December 10th, there are actually only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 working days.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So just so that, so the request, we shared the data and the form and all of that. So the request was for the questions to be submitted by the 24th. And our goal is to provide the responses to all those questions by Friday, the 29th, which includes obviously the holiday. So that means staff may potentially be working over the holiday. So if there's follow-up questions, we will always work to get those questions answered. But the goal is always for you guys to have the answers to your questions by your board meeting.
Yes.
So what we're attempting to do is follow the 11-day rule that the board has asked of us. So staff is prepared and you all are prepared at the day of the meeting. But if there's any follow-up, of course, you can always ask that and we'll always get it back to you.
Yeah, I think if it's possible, being that it's been a lot of reporting, a lot of data that's been shared, I do think it would be beneficial for us as a board, as a whole on the 10th, to have conversation, to hear perspectives from everybody, so we can gather, I know, I'm just saying, we all have conversations, so we can, at some point, have a conversation to hear what everyone's individual priorities may be based on the data, right? But then after that, we can collectively come together using the facilitation to say these are our priorities as a board as a whole.
We'll go through that exercise, but as Dr. Balknight mentioned today, we've already started that process. If you think about it, what the priorities are. Because we've already seen that we're aligned in many places already. So we'll go through an exercise similar but based on this, we're aligned in many places already.
And to answer a question, I think what Ms. Shook was asking earlier about this This information will be synthesized and we will provide that to you all as well.
Wonderful.
So you'll have, this is what you all said for each of your goals. Now, you won't necessarily be like the wondering, like I wonder and I notice, really, the purpose of that wasn't to really ask staff the question to go find the answers. It was really to get your brain activated of, what's interesting about this? So our intent of doing this was not necessarily to go back and get all the answers to those questions. We'd ask if you have questions to submit them through that form.
I think it would be good for the thoughts.
Okay.
And I think once we receive that, me seeing others' wonderings can just spark my thought process as well. So then that can help me inform if I do have any other questions before I file the forms.
Sure.
Kind of help guide my thought process. That would be good.
And remember, the wonderings maybe actually give us guidance on how we want the comprehensive review to go. Like, should there please review this subset of this subject area, right? And then bring us back the data, and then we make a decision. So it's not like we're not gonna have all the data on December 10th. We're gonna have enough data to say, hey, that's what the wonderings is, like, I'm wondering this thing, and we need you to go and review this subject area, so that we can make a decision as a board in returns that fits within our 5 areas of the comprehensive review, A through E.
Oh, so we're not making a decision December 10th, we're
Giving directions.
Yes,
giving direction?
yes, we're giving directions.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not making any student assignment boundary decisions, we're not making any magnet programming decisions.
Okay, that's what
We're
I
not
thought.
doing- Oh, no, we don't have
That's what
information
we're
for
all
that.
under the impression of that.
Oh, no, we don't have information for that. We're setting the priority, like, they can't look into every single thing. Like, we have a dozen wonderings here, right? So what are our priority wonderings? Like, what is it that we want them to address first? Keep in mind, we're keeping in mind that the priority, number one, is that we have to get through our bond project. So we're gonna have things associated with that. So we have to do that, but what else is our wondering? Should we be looking at magnet programs? Should we be looking at, have them do an analysis of transportation zones? Like all of those things, and they're gonna come back to us for us to make a decision about it. They're gonna make a recommendation.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot to.
That's.
Yes,
Can I say what you said just a little bit differently?
yes.
There are a lot of things that's lifted in this data, right? A lot. So anybody can say, oh my goodness, there's 15 million things for us to fix. So if we had infinite resources, meaning infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of money, an infinite amount of people, and an infinite amount of will, so intestinal fortitude, guts, we'd be able to fix everything that was in this binder on this website. We have limited amount of time. We have limited amount of money. We have limited amount of people. And I would, if you venture to say, we have a limited amount of will, right? Because change is hard.
Yeah.
And so that's not a bad thing. It's just like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, right?
Right.
So with all of those things being said, what we're going to be looking for you on the 10th is not necessarily to make a decision or solve for any of these things, but you all may collectively agree. We have some concerns about magnet, I'll just say that, because of all the things that were lifted, and Dr. Witherspoon mentioned the 2015, so we might say, you all might say, one of the priorities is to come up with a clear goal or purpose of magnets. That would be a great priority. For purpose of things unknown, abuse is inevitable, right? So we might be trying to do lots of different things through our magnet programs, but it's not aligned to the board's purpose and goal, right? So that might be one priority that you give us. And then another priority that you might say is we'd like for you to go back and do some research, not a deep financial analysis, again, we have a limited amount of time, but give us overall, what's the cost, the total investment in magnets versus a traditional school? Then you guys might come back and say, well, with all that being said, looks like magnets is something we really want to do for this purpose. We want you to figure out a way to come up with an equitable way for that to happen. That doesn't mean, I'm picking on y'all, that doesn't mean re-implement hub stops. Door-to-door transportation, because that's a fix. We might be able to come up with a plan, because remember, you also have to do your second goal, which which talks about making sure that we're using efficiency with transportation, right? So if you tell us you need to do this, it might be in direct conflict with another one of the board's goals. So we'll be looking to you to give us some really high level things, and someone will be here to help guide your thinking. And to your point, you will not be making any decision. Like, you'll be giving us a thumbs up, thumbs down, we're really interested in. Or you might say, oh my gosh, 30 projects in 35 schools, we want you to do that and nothing, like Ms. Sneed, Chair Sneed said, or we want you to do this, and this is probably a big problem. So we want you to speak.
It's just prioritization.
And again, our goal is to get all of the board's questions answered. So get them to us. As long as you guys give us grace, giving the answers back to you, we'll give you grace for answering the questions.
And think about too, when you're asking questions, is the question going to make an impact on your decision for priority? So, I like to use chocolate milk examples. Like, so do you need, how many schools have chocolate milk at 32 degrees on Mondays? You don't need that information to make the decision on how do we set our priorities to give direction for the staff. So think about the question in that and data related. Like, so it doesn't have to be a detailed thing. The detailed thing may be that you want them to have this as a part of the conversation. Like you said, the financial thing. Like, so we're not gonna have the questions today before the meeting. You know what I mean?
But that could be,
a part. We want this to be.
yeah, we need to understand what we're doing versus what the Maggie School of America recommends and what's.
Right.
Yeah.
See,
Right. So it's more broad, so you probably need more broad questions as opposed to narrow. To help make you, I'm guessing, I don't know, questions are, but be thinking about as that's your question. Like, so it shouldn't be staff going and pulling up a bunch of data, I wouldn't think. Because we just are making a broad recommendation for them to go look at something deeper. Does that make sense?
I just want to, and I'm ready to go home. I'm going to be the last person to speak. But I don't want to be lost what he said, and I think it's so important that this is a huge undertaking. I think all the work that we do, and I don't think there's enough intentional conversations. I mean, we kind of go in our cohorts and talk to whoever, how we do it, but it's one thing to read what people say, there's another thing to have an authentic conversation and really hear what everybody's ideas are. And I haven't seen that. And so I would hope that I don't know what that looks like, but I would like to have more of those conversations. And that's certainly not lost on me.
So I think that the answer to that is yes, but I don't want it to be lost that that's why staff came up with this exercise today. So we can kind of hear
I'm not talking about staff, I'm talking about our own
conversations. I love this. This was great.
I get what you're saying, but what I'm saying is the exercise that we went through today was an opportunity so that we could start having these conversations, and that's why we heard from each other. Just like we went through the Goal 4 exercise, and we heard each other what we thought about Goal 4, that opportunity is going to be presented at the December 10th meeting. If that's what you're asking.
That's not what I'm asking.
What are you asking? You're not talking about during a meeting?
No.
Oh, well, yes. Well, there's some limitations on us having a discussion about board matters as a group because we can't do it any more than 5.
Right.
So,
yeah, I don't know what that looks like.
Yes,
but,
yes.
But in order for us to become effective, we gotta have that space to have those conversations. It does not exist.
yeah, I think that's, so one, I want to make sure we have that opportunity to have those discussions at the December 10th meeting so everybody can see where we are. And then the other thing is, this one we kind of break up in small groups a little bit, but yeah.
Can I just say one closing thing? I would just like to recognize the staff behind me that has put an incredible amount of stress, because I know I'm probably stressed all of them out. So I just want to thank them them for everything that they've done to get it as close to perfect as possible. So thank you for that. And I'd also like to thank our board. This is really, 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 really hard work. And Dr. Witherspoon's point and all of you, Chair Sneed's point, just the willingness to have this conversation and to dig into the data is a lot. So